What's going on, Dolphins fans? It's Connor from the Dolphins Dive, and today is the unfortunate recap of the Week 4 game against the Cincinnati Bengals, where the Dolphins lost 27-15. I'm just gonna go out straight off the rip and address the elephant in the room, I guess, the whole Tua injury. After it happened, I was genuinely just disinterested in the game. I really could give a fuck if we won or lost. It was hard to watch. But there's a lot of speculation and shitting on the Dolphins organization, which may be justified. But I'm going to break down the entire situation because there's a lot of opinions and we're not doctors. So, obviously, Matt Milano pushed him to the ground. He hits his head. He starts stumbling. Everyone thinks he's concussed. Comes out for the second half. Has a solid second half. Then has a post-game press conference where he's perfectly fine, where they say that the issue that caused the stumbling was a back injury sustained from QB sneak. Now, if you go and see the QB sneak, it completely makes sense that his back got injured. Now, is his back what caused the stumbling, or was he actually concussed? I don't know. He was cleared by an independent doctor and the team trainers. Now, if they failed him in that he was actually concussed, then those guys should be fired. Absolutely. But there's also a situation where it was actually his back. I'm not saying either one is true or false. I don't know. I would more rely on the doctors and the independent physician who cleared him. And if they genuinely cleared him that it was a back injury that caused the stumbling, then they're two separate events. So obviously it looks really bad when you see him stumbling on Sunday and then proceed to get knocked out on Thursday. But there's also a scenario where it's two separate events. We don't know. The doctors know that we're there. And if those doctors failed they choked giving him the proper concussion protocol, that's on them. They should lose their jobs. I don't know. And neither does anyone else that wasn't actually with Tua. So from the outside looking in, from how we're hearing it from Tua himself, who seemed perfectly normal in his press conferences and his interviews, which doesn't mean he wasn't concussed. We don't know. But from Tua himself, from McDaniel, and from the protocol that went in place from independent and team doctors, which you have to realize, these doctors care about the player's health, despite what people may seem. Like, I've been in a sports medicine class, they don't fuck around with concussions. So I'm not saying that he wasn't concussed from the Bills game. There's a chance, and if that's the case, those people need to be penalized. However, there's also a chance those people correctly assessed the situation, and it was a separate event that caused him to get concussed this week. So that's all I have on that situation. I know there's a lot going on social media, trashing the Dolphins. Everyone should be fired, and maybe so if they actually did fail Tua in the protocol. There's a chance. But there's also a chance that it's two separate scenarios, and everyone's seeming to ignore that. So, without further ado, I'm going to get to the game. Like I said, I was pretty disinterested post-injury, so it's probably going to be a brief breakdown. Obviously, with Tua in the game, our first drive was very nice. Tua was surgical, and then Chase Edmonds drops the third down touchdown in the back right corner of the end zone, which killed the drive. And that was kind of the theme of this game. We were not able to execute in the red zone. Too many missed opportunities to get 7 instead of 3. So it started there. Obviously, the first drive of the game, the Bengals also cruised down the field. But then our defense played a pretty solid game. Tua with a really bad pick to Tyreek. Multiple things that went wrong. Obviously, it was underthrown, which I'm sure the national media was stoked about. But Tua was able to throw further than he did there. But the timing of the play, along with Tua doesn't have the best arm, as well as potentially the injury limiting his ability to throw deep, it was just a poor decision on Tua. Either get the ball out quicker so that way he can run underneath it instead of it being underthrown, or look elsewhere. But I do think the back limited Tua. I'm not saying if he was fully healthy, he makes the throw anyway, because like I said, Tua doesn't have the strongest arm, but he has a strong enough arm to get things done. But he came back after that, also proceeded to do good. So the injury, obviously, like that, we were all gutted, and I was genuinely very disinterested, like I said. The run game looked very poor, which was not a good thing to see. And we would get a nice run and it's a holding or it's something. There's always something negating our big runs. So we had 20 carries for 75 yards, which isn't really good. And it's something that I expected McDaniel to have right. But we seem to be a more pass-heavy team. And, whatever works. It's just not what I anticipated. And I think it's a combination of missing blocking tight ends and Hunter Long being hurt. And then Durham Smythe, I saw him get messed up a couple times trying to block, but he also did a good job blocking a couple times. I think inconsistency blocking at tight end, as well as just the entire offensive line with inconsistent blocking, is why the run game isn't where we would like it. But as for the pass game, it was pretty solid as usual. Tyreek went for 10 catches, 160 yards. Waddle had a quiet night. It was kind of post-Tua, so I don't know if it's just Teddy and his connection aren't good, or Waddle also seemed to obviously be shaken up by the Tua thing. Maybe it just kind of affected him. Don't know. But our pass game's very good. I would like to see our run game continue to improve and get better. That's the hope, because we're going to need it down the stretch, especially if we're without Tua for multiple weeks, which I anticipate and honestly hope. Defensively, we let up 27 points, but you got to realize the last touchdown was really garbage time. All things considered, I would say the defense did a good job when you consider they were without X for like an entire quarter, and they're coming off a game where they played 90 snaps against a good offense. I'm happy with the defense's performance. I thought Kader Kohu played a phenomenal game, as well as Nick Needham. Landon Roberts on 3rd and 4th and shorts is one of the best players in the fucking league at that. He has obviously limitability. He's not the best in coverage, okay? But when it comes to stuffing the run, there's no better in the league, honestly. Christian Wilkins made some plays. Xavier had an all right game. People like to shit on him because when he gets beat, it's pretty evident on whose fault it is. But when you're talking about playing man-to-man coverage against the best receiver in the league with zero help over top, and he was covering T, not Jamar, but still, with no safety help, all by himself, it's not an easy task. So, especially when you consider he had a groin injury, and he later went out in the game, I think X didn't do as bad as people probably thought he was. As well, who else did? Jalen Phillips, he doesn't necessarily show up on the stat sheet, but if you watch the guy play, man, relentless effort. Even like they throw a screen to the opposite side of the field, the motherfucker's running. Like I appreciate Jalen Phillips' effort a ton. There's instances where he's so close to sacks, they just get the ball out quick. So Jalen Phillips is a very, very good player, and I don't think people are necessarily giving him his props. Javon Holland's a stud. He bet on a couple moves. In terms of like double moves from receivers, which I can't necessarily blame him, because as a safety, you kind of need to bite on things because you anticipate your pass rush to get there, and it just didn't, so it looked bad on him. But Javon Holland's a stud, we all know that. But honestly, all things considered, when you consider that the defense played 90 snaps 4 days ago, and they're banged up without their top corner being hurt going into the game, and then missing the final quarter, being without Byron Jones, against one of the top offenses of the league, with your offense not being as good because your quarterback's injured, and our offense's inability to execute on in the right. All things considered, I thought our defense did a good job. Our offense had moments. Obviously, the deep bomb to Tyreek, but I think the story of what went wrong for us, obviously besides the Tua injury, it was the inability to run the football, and then scoring in the red zone. That was a clear issue in this game. So hopefully they can look to get that improved. We have the Jets next week. I hope without Tua, I hope they give him time to rest. So it'll be interesting to see how that pans out. But thankfully there's 10 days to fully recover, so our defensive guys are going to get right. Hopefully Byron Jones gets activated off the IR, and it just gives time for guys to get healthy, because they're pretty banged up, and you're talking 4 days after playing that game in Buffalo. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Comment any concerns or what you were excited about from the game. And until next time, I'll catch y'all.